Good evening and welcome to Writers Television Journal, and we have a new show starting another new season. My name is Chuck Carson.
And I'm Dale Pauly.
And our guest tonight is George Garwood. George, we want to welcome you. You've come a long way to make this show. We told you we would spare no expense, and we really haven't. We've gone all the way to Jamaica to bring you a famous publisher. Welcome to the show, George.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, good. We do know that you were originally from Jamaica, but currently now reside in Reedley, California, one of the wonderful hot spots of the world. And we say that in all honesty, don't we?
Yes,
Tell me.
very nice place, very quiet.
I want you to tell me about getting into the publishing business, because that's what you are. It says GMR Publications, and we'd like to learn a little bit more about that.
Well, recently, we're looking at about July. I published a book called Principles of Business for the Caribbean. This book is essentially designed for students, high school students, that's based in the Caribbean. It was something I've been working on with this book for like some 8 years, and it was difficult to find a publisher. You know, many writers or would-be writers would like to find a publisher. They have some ideas, some things they want to get across to the public, but nobody wants to touch them because they're not known.
Yeah, that's that terrible problem.
That's right.
Catch-22.
Catch-22. So what I decided to do, I had enough confidence in my book, my abilities to actually publish the books. So I went out and I bought myself a computer system, let me say an Apple Macintosh system, which is very good. I learned the whole system, PageMaker, MicroWorks, and all that business, got a scanner, and I decided, in fact, to get my book, if you like, desktop-based camera ready for publication. And so this took me about a year to do. And so I finally published my book under the title, at least the name, GMR Publications. In fact, G represents George, that's me. Mm-hmm. M represents Merlene. And R represents Rachel, my daughter, who lives in England.
And now Merlene is your wife?
Merlene is my wife.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's G. We've got the GMR all figured out. Prior, though, to getting into the publishing world, you're not a stranger to the writing world, because I know you wrote for one of the leading newspapers, or the leading newspaper in Jamaica, correct?
Yes, I did. I wrote, and I'm still writing for a newspaper in Jamaica, based in Kingston, Jamaica, and it's a national paper, and it has Caribbean links. It's also, in fact, distributed here in the United States and also in England and Canada. So it's also very international, too. And this paper is called the Gleaner, the Daily Gleaner, and also the Sunday Gleaner. And I write for this paper. I write articles of sort of cultural, economic, social, religious, political interest. It covers the whole spectrum of sort of human experiences and dimensions. So yes, I do write for that paper.
Well, now, a lot of our viewers are people who want to be writers. They sit and they write, but when they call themselves wannabes, it means that until they sell something, they don't feel accomplished, which we don't feel is right, because we think if you write it down
Absolutely
on paper,
not.
You're a writer. But how did you manage to make that move into something as big as the Gleaner? Because it's not a small newspaper. You and I had commented with Dale that it probably registers like the LA Times or the New York Times as far as being in the Caribbean.
Yes. It was very interesting how I came to do that. Well, initially, when I went to Jamaica in 1982, I was actually living then in California, and I decided to do a stint of teaching, almost like a kind of community service, a sort of Peace Corps type of thing. Give a little back to my country, because I'd left Jamaica for over 20 years. And I felt I needed to go back and give something, so I decided to teach there. So while I was teaching there, I came across a newspaper that was going. It was called the Daily News. And I witnessed an event in Kingston one day. It was a rather sad, tragic event, in fact, Kingston. And it moved me so much that I called the newspaper company at the time and says, look, I'm here now, returning resident from the United Kingdom, from the United States rather, and I've seen this incident and I'd like to just report it. And the editor said, yes, go ahead and let us know about it. So I wrote an article about this incident. And so the newspaper liked my writing, and then I was writing for them for quite a few months. Unfortunately, they fell in hard times and had to close. In the meantime, the Gleaner company got to hear about me, and obviously read about some of my articles. And I knew the assistant editor. He had also been a former teacher at the school at which I was now teaching. and he got to know what I was doing. And he asked me to submit some articles to the newspaper, that's the Gleaner. And that is how I sort of came to be writing for the paper.
So what you did was turn an emotional experience into something you put on paper, which led you to becoming a writer.
Yes, indeed.
Is that something that you feel is the best way to get started? In other words, if you wrote something you really felt very strongly about, do you think you can do a much better job than researching a piece and saying, well, I'm going to write about the tourism in Jamaica?
Well, I think basically you have to have some writing skills. It does help to have some writing abilities.
I bet it does.
It's one thing having emotion, but you know, you've got to be able to express it and put it down in a coherent, in a logical form. So that I felt I had, because I've been sort of writing a number of years. Even as a student, I did lots of papers, except research papers and things like that. So I had a background. And also, I think I loved reading. And I also read a lot of books too. So it's very important to be a good reader, to be a good writer, to have good penmanship, and also have this emotional element about it too. Okay. Something that you think is relevant to the people. And I think certainly that article and my articles which I write certainly have this kind of relevance and sense of relevance, yes.
But you said that you tackle a wide variety of subjects that you will write about cultural events. You'll write about social economic events. That is kind of rare in a writer, isn't it? Because some people kind of put themselves in little niches or pockets where all I'm going to write about is culture. All I'm going to write about is travel.
Yes, well, I'm glad you think it's rare.
I do.
But I majored in the humanities back at university. And also I did some theology too. But yes, you are right. If you like, my gamut, emotional gamut, and also my intellectual and academic, if you like, spectrum is very, very wide. My experiential base is also very deep, very wide. Because after all, I was born in Jamaica, lived there for about 10 years of my life, went to Britain, lived in Britain for about 20 years, traveled extensively throughout Britain. Also was a tour of the continent. Germany, France, Italy, the different countries like that. Did a lot of trips around the Caribbean, also Jamaica. Did an extensive tour of the United States. Jumped on the Greyhound bus and Trailways bus and toured the United States. It was a phenomenal experience.
Way to see the USA.
What you're doing, you're out Hemingway. You know, that's what you're doing. Because, and this is great. I mean, that was one of the things that I think he attributed to being able to give him the wherewithal to write so many wonderful things about such a diverse area, because he wanted to be part of everything, and he did make it a point, as you have.
Yes, you really have to get about it. Mine is expensive too, and you do have to make sacrifices to be able to do that. For instance, it was only 2 years ago. I jumped in my car and left Los Angeles all the way into Mexico City.
Wow.
7 days road trip. It was horrendous. I wouldn't want to do it again.
Oh, no.
And so camping out here and there.
But it's the adventure nature of your soul, I think, that gives you the ability to sit down and transpose it to paper. Before we have a couple of minutes left in the first part of our interview before we jump up to our second guest, but GMR Publications, which is now your publishing company, are you going to expand at any point to print or publish other people's works?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. I'd love to do poems. I'd love to do anthologies. I'd love to do short stories. I'd love to do academic texts, just about anything that anybody wants to publish and can't get it published anywhere. I'd love to be able to look at that and consider it and work with it.
Well, that's what we're asking. Would you like, if we have an opportunity, some of our viewers want to send you material just to look at, would you be willing to do that?
I'd be delighted. I'd welcome that.
All right. What we're going to do is to make sure we put up on the screen all of the information of how they can contact you, and then you can send your submissions to George. No guarantees, but at least you're going to have someone who you know has done it himself, who is an accomplished writer, and can give you an honest review of what you're doing. And we'll come back and talk more about that, George. But right now, we're going to move on to our second interview. And do you know who that is?
Who is that?
Who'd that be?
Who is it?